Welcome to my channel. Please support my channel with subscribe, like, and share. Thank you. It was a quiet evening in the small town of Willow Creek, the kind of night where the wind whispered secrets through the old oak trees, and the rain tapped gently against the window panes. James sat in his living room, staring at the flickering candlelight, the storm outside casting dancing shadows across the walls. The house he shared with Emma had always been peaceful, filled with laughter and soft conversations, but tonight, something felt different, like the calm before a storm, both outside and inside. James had moved to Willow Creek for a simpler life. The city had been too loud, too demanding, and he longed for comfort, for warmth, for a place where he could finally breathe. Emma, his neighbor-turned-friend, had been a quiet presence in his life for months. They shared dinners occasionally, coffee in the mornings, and long walks in the park when the leaves turned gold. It had never been anything beyond friendship, yet somehow, their connection felt deeper than either of them had admitted. The storm outside grew heavier, lightning flashing across the sky, illuminating Emma's familiar face at the window. She was drenched from the rain, hair sticking slightly to her cheeks, and eyes that held a storm of their own, something that tugged at James in ways he couldn't yet name. He didn't move, he didn't speak, he simply watched, his heart racing as a strange, unfamiliar tension filled the room. Emma knocked lightly on the door, and when James opened it, the warmth of the house hit her like a gentle embrace. She smiled, but it was fragile, as though she were carrying a secret she wasn't ready to reveal. "James, the storm," she began, but her voice faltered. "Come in," he said softly, stepping aside. There was a moment of silence between them, one heavy with anticipation. It wasn't the silence of discomfort, it was the silence of emotions unspoken, of feelings hovering just out of reach. They sat together on the couch, the fire crackling beside them. Rain hammered against the windows, and James noticed how close Emma's shoulder was to his, how her warmth seemed to fill the space around him. "You got soaked," he said finally, offering her a towel. She laughed quietly, a sound that always seemed to make his chest tighten. "I didn't think I'd make it through without getting wet," she admitted. Her eyes held his, searching, lingering, as if trying to read what he wasn't saying. For a while, they simply watched the storm, the world outside disappearing in the rhythm of rain and distant thunder. James felt a pull he couldn't name, a mixture of longing and curiosity. He wondered why he felt this way about her, why her presence in his home, on this stormy night, made everything else fade. As the night deepened, Emma reached for her cup of tea, her fingers brushing his hand. It was accidental, or at least he wanted to believe it was, but the electricity of that touch lingered longer than it should have. They shared stories of their pasts, dreams, and fears, but underneath the conversation, an unspoken connection grew, delicate yet undeniable. The storm outside mirrored the storm inside him. He realized that he had begun to see Emma differently, that friendship had shifted quietly into something more, something dangerous in its intensity. And though he tried to tell himself he was imagining it, the way she looked at him, the softness in her voice, told a different story. Lightning flashed again, and this time, Emma flinched, leaning slightly against him. He could feel her heartbeat, rapid and warm, and in that instant, the world shrank to the two of them, the fire, and the storm. It was a moment suspended in time, fragile, electric, and full of possibilities that neither dared name aloud. The night stretched on, shadows shifting, rain falling harder, and James felt the weight of a truth he wasn't ready to face. Emma was more than a friend. She was a temptation, a longing, a storm in human form, and he didn't know if he could or should resist. And then, a knock at the door. Not a polite knock like before, but urgent, insistent, demanding attention. James froze, heart pounding, and Emma's eyes widened as she turned to look at him. Whoever it was, whoever had come to disturb this fragile night, would change everything? The storm outside was nothing compared to what was about to unfold inside the house. James slowly moved toward the door, each step heavier than the last. The storm's fury outside seemed to echo the racing of his heart. Emma stayed close behind him, her hand brushing against his arm, a subtle reassurance but also a spark that made him aware of every beat in his chest. He opened the door cautiously, expecting perhaps a neighbor seeking shelter or some delivery gone wrong. Instead, standing on the wet porch, silhouetted against the flashing lightning, was Lucas, Emma's ex-boyfriend. James had met him briefly at the community center, remembered his confident smile and easy charm, but tonight, there was something different in Lucas's storm of his own. A desperation that immediately set James on edge. "Emma," Lucas said, his voice low, almost pleading, "we need to talk. It's important." Emma's face paled, and James could see the hesitation in her eyes. She had spoken little of Lucas since she'd moved back to Willow Creek, only mentioning him once or twice, carefully skimming over details. Yet now, here he was, and the air between them felt charged with unspoken history. "Lucas, it's late, and there's a storm," Emma began, but Lucas stepped forward, ignoring the rain dripping from his jacket. "Please, just a minute," he said. "I promise it won't take long." James stepped slightly in front of Emma, protective instinct kicking in. "Maybe this can wait until the storm passes," he said, voice firm. But Lucas didn't move back. There was a tension in the air, an invisible pull between past and present, between what had been and what could be. Emma's eyes flicked from James to Lucas, a silent battle of loyalty and longing playing across her features. James realized then that he had entered more than a stormy night. He had entered the middle of someone else's emotional history, and the outcome was uncertain. Lucas glanced at James, a flicker of recognition and, perhaps, challenge passing between them. "I'm not here to cause trouble," he said, softer now. "I just need to say goodbye, properly." Emma's hand found James's again, gripping it tightly. The small gesture carried more meaning than words ever could. James felt a swell of protectiveness, but also something more complicated in emotion that was equal parts fear and desire, worry and anticipation. "Goodbye?" James asked cautiously. "Yes," Lucas said, turning toward Emma. "Before I leave Willow Creek, I needed to clear things between us." The storm outside intensified, rain lashing against the windows as if echoing the tension inside. James could feel Emma trembling slightly, not from the cold, but from the weight of history pressing down on her. She looked at him, eyes full of uncertainty, and in that moment, James realized that their quiet friendship had transformed into something far more fragile, far more intense than he had allowed himself to admit. Emma finally spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "Lucas, I've moved on. I'm happy here." Lucas nodded slowly, though his eyes betrayed a mix of regret and longing. "I know," he said. "That's why I had to come tonight. To accept it, and to let you go completely." There was a pause, a fragile moment hanging between all three of them. The storm outside seemed to hold its breath, waiting for what would come next. James felt his heart thump harder as Emma leaned slightly against him, her closeness a silent confession of where her heart had chosen to be. Lucas finally turned, and with one last lingering look at Emma, he stepped back into the rain, disappearing into the night. The door clicked shut, leaving James and Emma alone in the flickering candlelight once more. For a moment, the silence was heavy, filled with unspoken words. Emma looked at James, eyes glistening, and he could see the complexity of her feelings: relief, sadness, and a subtle spark of something more. James took her hand gently. "You're safe here," he said softly. "No one is coming to disturb this moment again." Emma smiled, a mix of gratitude and something deeper, almost magnetic, passing between them. The storm outside began to subside, but the storm within their hearts was only beginning to unfold. As the rain slowed to a gentle drizzle, Emma and James sat together by the fire, words unnecessary for what hung in the air. They shared glances, fleeting touches, and an intimacy that neither had expected but both had secretly hoped for. It was a night that promised change, a night where choices would matter more than ever before. And then, the power flickered, a soft hum of the circuit struggling, the lights dimming, the shadows dancing wildly across the walls. James reached for a flashlight, but Emma beat him to it, her fingers brushing his. The storm outside may have passed, but inside the house, a new tension sparked, one that neither could ignore. It was a quiet house no longer. Something had shifted, an invisible line had been crossed, and by morning, nothing would be the same. The storm had passed, but the air inside the house still felt electric. James and Emma sat in the dim glow of the fire, neither speaking at first. The events of the night lingered, heavy and fragile, like a fragile glass waiting to crack. James could feel the weight of his emotions pressing against his chest, the protectiveness, the attraction, the uncertainty of what the night had stirred. Emma finally broke the silence, her voice soft. "I didn't expect him to come. Not tonight." She sighed, her fingers tracing idle patterns on the armrest. "I thought I had closed that chapter of my life, but seeing him, it brought everything back." James nodded, trying to keep his voice steady. "People from the past can have a way of showing up when you least expect it. But you're here now, and this is real, what we have." Emma looked at him, eyes glistening with unshed tears. "But it's complicated. I don't want to hurt anyone, and I don't want to make mistakes either." James reached out and gently held her hand, feeling the warmth of her skin against his. You won't hurt anyone by being honest with your heart, he said. We can't control the past, but we can choose how we move forward. The room seemed smaller suddenly, the firelight flickering against their faces, highlighting every subtle emotion. James felt a longing he had tried to suppress for months, now unleashed by the night's events. He wanted to say everything, to confess all the thoughts and feelings he'd kept hidden, yet he held back, knowing that Emma needed the space to decide for herself. Emma shifted closer, resting her head lightly on his shoulder. James could feel the tension in her body, the mixture of fear and desire, the way her heartbeat seemed to sync with his. The quiet intimacy of the moment was almost unbearable, so full of emotion, so charged with possibilities. I've always trusted you, James, Emma whispered. Even when I didn't understand my own feelings, I trusted you. That's why I'm here with you tonight. James swallowed hard, his heart racing. He had never imagined a night like this, so tender, so intense, so full of unspoken confessions. He wanted to tell her that he felt the same, that every quiet moment they had shared had built up to this, that he had fallen for her in ways he hadn't dared admit. Before he could speak, there was a sudden knock at the door. The sound startled both of them, breaking the fragile bubble of their shared emotions. James exchanged a tense glance with Emma. Who could it be at this hour, after everything that had just happened? He opened the door cautiously, and standing there, drenched once again by the lingering drizzle, was Lily, Emma's younger sister. Her expression was urgent, her eyes wide with concern. Emma, James, I didn't know where else to go. Something's happened, and you both need to know. Emma's hand flew to her mouth, her face pale. Lily, what is it? Lily stepped inside without waiting for an invitation, dripping water onto the floor. It's about Lucas, and someone else. It's serious. James felt a knot tighten in his stomach. Just when he thought the night's storm had settled, a new wave of tension and uncertainty had arrived. The quiet house they had shared, the fragile intimacy, was suddenly threatened again, not by weather, but by secrets and choices. Emma looked at James, eyes wide and frightened, and he realized that whatever Lily had to say would change everything. The night, the storm, the confessions, the subtle touches, they had all been a prelude to something bigger, something that would demand honesty, courage, and perhaps heartbreak. For a moment, the three of them stood in the dimly lit living room, the firelight casting shadows across their faces. Outside, the rain had slowed to a drizzle, but inside, the air felt thick with anticipation, the tension almost tangible. James squeezed Emma's hand gently, silently promising he would face whatever came next with her. Emma nodded slightly, taking a deep breath as if bracing herself, and then Lily spoke, her voice trembling but determined. You need to know the truth, before it's too late. The words hung in the air like a warning, a whisper of the storm that was about to return, not outside, but inside the hearts of everyone in that house. Emma took a shaky breath and motioned for Lily to sit down by the fire. James followed, feeling the tension tighten around them like a heavy fog. The warmth of the room contrasted sharply with the chill that had settled over their hearts. Lily, what's going on? Emma asked softly, her voice almost breaking. Lily hesitated, her fingers twisting nervously in her lap. It's about Lucas, and someone he's been seeing, she began. I didn't know how to tell you, Emma, but I couldn't keep it from you either. James felt a pang in his chest. He knew this moment could either deepen the bond between him and Emma or shatter everything they had begun to feel for each other. Emma's eyes widened. Someone else? You mean, he? Her voice caught, and she swallowed hard, trying to stay composed. Yes, Lily said gently. He's been involved with someone else for a while. I found out tonight when I was in town. I saw him, Emma. He's moved on in a way you didn't expect. A quiet silence fell over the room. James glanced at Emma, her face pale and rigid, eyes glistening with unshed tears. Her lips quivered as she absorbed the weight of the revelation. He felt an unexpected surge of protectiveness and something else, relief, mixed with a complicated sense of destiny. Emma finally whispered, all this time, I thought I needed to understand him, to fix things, but he was already gone, already somewhere else. She looked at James then, and he could see the shift in her gaze, the subtle acknowledgement of the present, of him, of the life they might share. James took her hand again, letting their fingers intertwine naturally. Emma, you don't have to look back anymore. The past is gone. We have tonight, this moment, and whatever comes next. Emma's lips curved into a small, tentative smile. I think I've been scared of feeling this way, she admitted. Scared of wanting someone, scared of getting hurt again. But tonight, everything feels different. The fire crackled beside them, filling the room with a warm glow. as if the house itself was witnessing the fragile intimacy growing between them. The storm outside had passed long ago, yet inside, a storm of longing, trust, and subtle romance had taken root, stronger than either could deny. Lily watched them quietly, her presence a gentle reminder of reality, yet she didn't interrupt. She could see what James had known for months. Emma and he were connected in a way that went beyond friendship. "I'm sorry for barging in," Lily finally said, her voice softening. "I just didn't want you to be blindsided by anything. I thought you should know the truth before it changed everything." Emma reached for Lily and squeezed her hand. "Thank you. Truly, I needed to hear this." James felt a wave of relief wash over him. The tension that had gripped the house all night began to ease, replaced by a delicate, fragile hope. He looked at Emma, her hair still slightly damp from the earlier storm, her eyes reflecting the flickering firelight, and he felt a longing so deep it made his chest ache. For the first time, the quiet house didn't feel empty, it felt alive with possibilities, with emotions that neither of them could ignore any longer. Emma leaned closer, resting her head lightly on James's shoulder again. "I think I've been waiting for a night like this," she murmured. "A night where everything changes, where we face the truth, and where I can finally feel what's right in front of me." James's heart thumped loudly, his fingers tightening around hers. "Then let's not waste another moment," he said softly, though he left the words open, allowing her to take the lead. The room seemed to shrink around them, the firelight flickering shadows on the walls, highlighting every emotion, every subtle movement, every heartbeat shared between them. Outside, the storm had ended, but inside, the quiet house had become a sanctuary of feelings too intense to ignore. And just as James felt a fragile sense of peace settle over them, a distant sound echoed from the front porch, a faint, almost imperceptible creak, like someone stepping carefully on wet wood. Both James and Emma froze, exchanging a tense glance. The night had brought revelations, intimacy, and subtle romance, but it seemed the house still held more secrets. Someone or something was still out there, waiting, watching, and ready to disrupt the fragile moment they had fought to create. James and Emma froze, listening intently to the faint creak from the porch. The storm had passed hours ago, yet the house felt charged, as if the night itself were holding its breath. James moved cautiously toward the door, every instinct alert. Emma followed silently, her hand brushing against his, grounding him, even as fear and anticipation surged through the room. He opened the door slowly. A shadow moved in the dim light of the porch, and for a moment, James's heart leaped, thinking it might be another unexpected visitor. But then the figure stepped forward, revealing an elderly neighbor, Mr. Thompson, holding a small package. His coat was soaked, his hair plastered by the lingering drizzle. "I'm sorry to bother you this late," Mr. Thompson said, his voice calm but concerned. "I found this on my porch. I think it belongs to Emma." Emma took the package, confusion flickering across her face. "I wasn't expecting anything tonight," she murmured. She opened it carefully, revealing a collection of old letters, tied with a faded ribbon. Her eyes widened as she recognized the familiar handwriting, Lucas's. James noticed the tension tighten in her chest, her hands trembling slightly as she read through the letters. They weren't recent, they were memories, confessions, and regrets from a past she had thought was long behind her. Each word carried the weight of emotions she had buried, feelings she had tried to forget. "Emma," James whispered softly, moving closer, his hand brushing hers again. "You don't have to face this alone." Emma looked up, her eyes glistening. "I thought I had moved on, James. I really did. But these letters, they remind me of everything I felt, everything I lost. And now, I don't know how to separate what was from what is." James squeezed her hand gently. "Then let's take it one step at a time. Tonight, right now, we can focus on what matters us, this moment, and the life we can choose together." The vulnerability in her eyes tugged at him, and in that instant, James realized the depth of his feelings. He had tried to be patient, to let her find her own path, but now, he wanted nothing more than to be the person she leaned on, the one who stayed when storms both literal and emotional passed. Emma's gaze softened, and she leaned closer, resting her head on his shoulder. The letters lay forgotten for the moment as they allowed themselves to be present, to share a quiet intimacy built on trust, understanding, and the subtle thrill of a connection neither had fully acknowledged until tonight. Yet, just as James began to feel the fragile peace settle over them, there was another sound, a soft, rhythmic tapping from the window facing the garden. Both of them turned, hearts quickening. The sound was deliberate, almost teasing, and it made the hair on James's neck stand on end. Emma whispered, "Who could that be?" James stepped closer to the window, peering into the darkness. The garden was empty, the night quiet except for the gentle rustle of leaves. For a moment, they saw nothing. And then, a shadow moved, a figure fleeting, disappearing behind the oak tree at the edge of the yard. James's protective instincts surged. "Someone's out there," he said, his voice steady but alert. "We need to be careful." Emma nodded, gripping his hand tightly. "I feel like everything tonight is testing us," she murmured. "Our pasts, our choices, and now, even strangers." James pulled her close, wrapping his arm around her protectively. "Then we face it together," he said firmly. "Whatever comes next, we face it as a team." The storm outside was long gone, but the night inside the quiet house had become a storm of its own emotions. Revelations, longing, and now, suspense. The fragile intimacy they had built hung in the air, thick with possibilities. As the distant shadow disappeared, leaving behind a question: who or what was watching, and how would it change everything? Emma rested against him, her voice barely a whisper. "I think tonight is the night everything changes, James. I don't know how, but I can feel it." James held her tighter, the warmth of her body and the sincerity of her words grounding him. "Then let's be ready, whatever comes." And with that, the quiet house, once filled with comfort and simplicity, became a stage for emotions neither of them could control, a storm of love, longing, and the unknown, waiting to reveal its final truth. The night had stretched long, filled with revelations, subtle confessions, and quiet intimacy. James and Emma sat together by the fire, the letters from Lucas lying forgotten on the table. Outside, the garden was still, the shadows gone, and for the first time in hours, the house felt calm, but the emotions inside were far from quiet. Emma leaned against James, her voice soft. "I've been holding on to so much. Guilt, confusion, fear. But tonight, I think I finally understand what matters." James held her hand firmly, his thumb brushing over hers. "Then tell me," he said, his voice gentle yet insistent. "Tell me what your heart wants." She lifted her gaze to his, eyes shimmering with emotion. "It wants honesty, James. It wants someone who stays when everything else is uncertain. And it wants you." James felt a rush of warmth and relief. He had waited for this moment, for her to acknowledge what he had felt for months. "Emma, I've wanted the same," he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. "I've wanted this, the chance to be with you, to care for you, to share life with you." A soft smile spread across her face, the tension that had gripped her for months beginning to melt. She reached up, brushing a damp strand of hair from his forehead, her touch tender, electric, and full of unspoken promises. The fire flickered, casting a warm glow over their faces as they leaned closer, not out of urgency, not out of passion alone, but out of a profound connection, one born from trust, vulnerability, and shared nights like this, where storms, both literal and emotional, had shaped them. James whispered, "Whatever the future holds, we'll face it together. No past, no fears, just us." Emma nodded, tears of relief and joy welling in her eyes. "Yes, just us." They sat in silence for a moment, listening to the gentle patter of the remaining rain outside. The house, once quiet and empty, now felt alive, not with chaos, but with the steady rhythm of hearts finding each other. The night's storms had brought them closer, revealing truths and dissolving doubts, leaving behind clarity, warmth, and a fragile yet unwavering hope. Emma finally laughed softly, the sound light and freeing. "I can't believe how much tonight changed everything," she said, resting her head on his shoulder again. James smiled, feeling a peace he hadn't known in years. "It's funny, isn't it? One stormy night, and everything shifts. But I think we were ready for it all along. We just didn't know it." The letters on the table were still there, reminders of a past that had shaped Emma but no longer held her back. James picked one up gently, reading a line aloud. "Sometimes letting go is the only way to truly begin." He looked at Emma, and they shared a knowing glance. Letting go of the past had allowed them to embrace what was real, what was possible. That's the storm outside finally faded, leaving only a gentle drizzle. James and Emma sat together, hearts aligned. The quiet house transformed into a sanctuary of connection, trust, and the promise of love. They had faced uncertainty, confronted the past, and chosen each other. Emma sighed, her voice soft and full of contentment. "I never expected one night could change so much." James kissed her forehead gently. "Sometimes, the most unexpected nights leave the deepest marks." The house, once a simple shelter from the world, had become a witness to a turning point in their lives, a night that had tested them, revealed truths, and allowed two hearts to finally find their home in each other. And as they sat together, the fire casting flickering shadows around them, they knew that the storms both outside and inside had brought them exactly where they were meant to be, together.